We in this country, in this generation, are, by destiny rather than choice, the watchmen on the walls of world freedom. We ask, therefore, that we may be worthy of our power and responsibility, that we may exercise our strength with wisdom and restraint, and that we may achieve in our time and for all time the ancient vision of peace on earth, goodwill towards men. That must always be our goal, and the righteousness of our cause must always underlie our strength. For as was written long ago, except the Lord keep the city, the watchman awaketh but in vain.
Kid, fight! Be seated. I want you to remember that no bastard ever won a war by dying for his country. He won it by making the other poor dumb bastard die for his country. Men, all this stuff you've heard about America not wanting to fight, wanting to stay out of the war, is a lot of horse dung. Americans traditionally love to fight. All real Americans love the sting of battle. When you were kids, you all admired the champion marble shooter, the fastest runner, big league ball players, the toughest boxers. Americans love a winner and will not tolerate a loser. Americans play to win all the time. I wouldn't give a hoot in hell for a man who lost and laughed. That's why Americans have never lost and will never lose a war, because the very thought of losing is hateful to Americans. Now, an army is a team. It lives, eats, sleeps, fights as a team. This individuality stuff is a bunch of crap. The bilious bastards who wrote that stuff about individuality for the Saturday Evening Post don't know anything more about real battle than they do about fornicating. Now, we have the finest food and equipment, the best spirit, and the best men in the world. You know, by God, I actually pity those poor bastards we're going up against. By God, I do. We're not just going to shoot the bastards. We're going to cut out their living guts and use them to grease the treads of our tanks. We're going to murder those lousy Hun bastards by the bushel. Now, some of you boys, I know, are wondering whether or not you'll chicken out under fire. Don't worry about it. I can assure you that you will all do your duty. The Nazis are the enemy. Wade into them. Spill their blood. Shoot them in the belly. When you put your hand into a bunch of goo that a moment before was your best friend's face, you'll know what to do. Now, there's another thing I want you to remember. I don't want to get any messages saying that we are holding our position. We're not holding anything. Let the Hun do that. We are advancing constantly, and we're not interested in holding on to anything except the enemy. We're going to hold on to him by the nose, and we're going to kick him in the ass. We're going to kick the hell out of him all the time, and we're going to go through him like crap through a goose. Now, there's one thing that you men will be able to say when you get back home, and you may thank God for it. 30 years from now, when you're sitting around your fireside with your grandson on your knee, and he asks you, what did you do in the great World War II? You won't have to say, well, I shoveled shit in Louisiana. All right, now you sons of bitches, you know how I feel. I will be proud to lead you wonderful guys into battle anytime, anywhere. That's all.
So here we go. We're getting started for Saturday, and you look left and you look right, and these are the people who make a difference. You're the people who care. You're the people who are learning. You're the people that are going to actually be the ones who are going to put your hand out there and say, let me help, as other people start waking up. And you know, for all of us, the waking up process has been either fast or slow, and we have been going through this, and it's really hard because we see what a lot of people don't see. But could you imagine, as these events continue to accelerate, how hard it will be for people who don't see anything to come up to where you are? It's going to be hard for them. So part of you being here today is to make sure that you have the words, you have the way to be able to tell them, here's what's going on. And there's been so much information that we've been exposed to over the last few years. Nobody knew it was the truth. There are things out there that were wild, things that were not wild. But now what you're doing, and what we call this in the military, is information immersion. You're immersing yourself in information, and then through prayer and meditation, you're able to guide your own opinion through your intuition. One of the things that our opposition likes to do is to cut off our contact with God. He wants to make sure that you can't hear him. So when you connect, then these things that are coming to you that may not be true, you're going to easily know that's not true, right? So your heart will start guiding you as you're provided with information. So what was the goal? When we talked yesterday, we talked a lot about a story. We wanted to create this as a story. And we were talking before about, you know, all of us have been through this experience, and I think November 3rd, 2020 is probably the best starting point. And you think about what we felt emotionally, what we felt spiritually, and we're probably all about on the same page, where I think right now what is happening, God is telling us that the solution does not come from us, no matter how smart we are. The solution doesn't come from a particular man. The solution comes to him or not at all. And he's going to make sure that we get the lesson, right? So when I say look left and right, most of you already know that, right? But what I'm doing today, and what we'll do throughout the day, is to provide you with information for you to use your discernment about the information and how you can communicate it to other people. All right, so I've got some housekeeping. Again, we've got these auction here for the Commander's Artist, and that is some cool stuff, isn't it? You know, very patriotic, very talented. So he's got a silent auction going today. So make sure you, if you want to get there, get back. He said he has two signed by Flynn. So it's something to check out. All right, we for lunch, and lunch will be the food truck will be here at 10:30, but I don't think they'll be starting until at 10:30 to 1. Donations is what they're looking for. And look, folks, most of the people here, they do this because they love their country, because they love their state. So they're not making any money, right? And most of the time, they're spending money in order to provide this information. I think you all know what that's called. It's a calling, right? It's a calling, and these people are called to do this, but that doesn't mean that you can't help them. So please, if you can, donate. And really, Gina and Doug, just what an amazing couple, what an amazing job they've done. So let's all give them a round of applause for this amazing job that they've done. Just fantastic. You know, and people are going to be filing in, filing out as the day goes on. It doesn't matter how many people are here or who are not here. I'm thinking about you. I'm thinking about you. Thinking about you, right? Let's do this as a family. Let's learn what we can. Don't hesitate to ask me questions. Now, questions. You should see pens and notepads or notes cards under your seats. What I've been told is if you've got questions, write the speaker name at the top, and then write your questions down so that they can be answered at a round table at the end. So it won't be each individual speaker. So I know you're all familiar with who's speaking today. And I'm going to try to tie that all together for you, and I'll be emceeing for you throughout the day. And if you can bring up mine, Doug. So again, what we said yesterday, right? Where's Sarge? Sarge, what we said yesterday was, welcome to the Continental Army, right? And he said it was the Gideon Army. I like to say the Continental Army. As I said, I'm a battalion commander. I actually have Sumter's battalion, if you know who General Sumter was. That's how old my family is, and that's what I'm doing now. So what I'm providing you with is the framework of what's happening. And now what you take, and what's happened organically in our community, is that certain people have hit certain aspects of an overall methodology of how a country is conquered without firing a shot, right? So like Mark, he's picked a particular part of it and dug down into it, right? Some people have done the social media part. What you need to understand is what is happening to this republic, to the state of Florida, to the state of South Carolina, is not organic. This is not a social movement. This is not some sort of natural progression of things other than an empire in decline. This is actually our country being attacked systematically, and each element of it has been done with military precision, something known as irregular warfare. So for those of you who are taking notes, look for something called irregular warfare. That's what's happening to your country. Your politicians now, we literally, because of a selection system, not an election system, they have no idea, even if they are self-interested and corrupt, they don't even know what this process is. They have no idea what's actually happening. This is a military movement against our country. And how you can define that is something called a color revolution. So for those of you who are taking notes, again, it's called a color revolution. So what I'm giving you today, now that you're members of the Continental Army, is a briefing, right? This is a briefing, a military briefing, right? So I've got my slides here on my iPad, so I'm gonna go through them with you. So and again, we try to give you tangible steps. So what you'll see up there is my slides as I go through it. And I like this one, and it's so unlikely. I don't know about any of you other men out there, and the men, you know, I was a professional athlete, military guy. I literally, if there was a cuss word that wasn't invented, I could say it. You know, just a worthless piece of human garbage in my 20s, right? And just brought to my knees by my own will and had to surrender to a different way of life. And it's so funny to me because I'm a very big Star Wars guy, and I always related to Boba Fett, right? I didn't want to be on any side. I just wanted to do my thing. And if you stick with this, and if you pray and pray and pray, you're going to be a Jedi. It's just going to happen, right? So it's very funny to me on this particular prayer what God uses and who God uses. It's not who you think it's going to be. It's going to be the guy who you never expected to be the guy. And I'm telling you, that's me, right? It's very funny to me. Consider it a pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. And that's so true, right? For me, what's the biggest thing? You know, and we talked about this yesterday, searching around on the internet for anybody to tell me what's happening. Searching around for these crazy things that are like, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, and looking for some sense of security that I could read from us. We've got this. And it wasn't there, you know. And then we would get these deadlines. Oh, this is going to happen at a certain point, and this is about to happen, and we're going to do this, and this is going to save the day. And it would build up into these emotional crescendos. And my family and I, we were running for office. We were doing all these things, and it just wasn't happening. And it would be disappointment after disappointment after disappointment, right? And that is actually military, right? It's called disappointment, 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 disillusion. And when you get disillusioned, what do? You quit. And that's exactly what they want. This is 5th generation warfare. We've been subjected to more psychological operations than any generation in the history of the world. We are inundated with it. So many people don't understand that the narrative that they're seeing in their life may all be false. Just consider. I'm not saying anything one way or the other, but I can go in certain places in Allendale, South Carolina, and my cell phone doesn't work. I cannot talk to somebody else, right? There's no landline that works, nothing works. So they're telling us, just consider, and I'm not getting anything crazy, back when Daddy was talking about landing on the moon, that the president can pick up a phone on his desk and call a dude on the moon live. I don't know, man. I mean, even that is things that you start thinking, is what they're showing us the truth? Because some of this stuff doesn't make any sense. So again, what you're doing is you're practicing discernment. You're going, okay, I don't know if this is true or not true, but I'm going to absorb some information about the topic and follow my heart. And why that ties to what we're saying is the biggest thing that we have developed is perseverance. We have developed perseverance, and we have developed our faith, both together. So who wins is those who persevere, right? And we know bad guys like to cut corners, right? And we don't. So we've earned it. All right, so this is, if you're taking notes, Sal Alinsky's 12 Rules for Radicals. Out there, anybody familiar with Sal Alinsky and the 12 Rules of Radicals? Okay, definitely. It's something this is their playbook. Remember that, you know, their enlisted staff, or I shouldn't say, like the provocateurs, the Antifa, those sort of people. This is kind of their guideline. This is their BMR, if you will, their basic military requirements. They study this stuff. They know how it works. They're well paid. One of the things you have to remember too about these provocateurs is that they're not organic. They'll go from, you know, a BLM to Palestine and they switch. It's the same people. They're just changing uniforms. So at J6, for example, you know, they were changing clothes in the bushes and things like that. It's not anything exciting. It's just what they do. So where was the first place that I saw that? 2014, the Orange Revolution. Anybody familiar with the Orange Revolution? Right? So this, again, the color revolution is something that we perfected, and it's been done all over the world. Iraq, Syria, Libya, Ukraine, 2014, right? So who started the war in Ukraine? Obama and the CIA. That's who started that. And if you don't believe that, then grow up, right? That's the way it is. So the consequences of what we're seeing is because they wanted a vassal state. They wanted to control Ukraine. So Sal Alinsky's, pick the target, freeze it, personalize it, polarize it, cut it up from the support network and isolate the target from sympathy. Go after people and not institutions. People hurt faster than institutions. This is cruel but very effective. Direct, personalized, criticism and ridicule works. So what's that called? Cancel culture, right? So it was right over here. John, right? Is it John? You were just talking about this. John came up to me and talked to me earlier. And John, can you come up and share what you were talking about? I'll give you like a minute and just tell everybody what you were thinking. And this does tie to how they isolate people, criticize and scare them.
Well, the point I wanted to make, and I know I'm speaking to the choir, is that it's important to wear something like my Trump hat or my Trump shirt or a sticker on your car because it brings people up to you. So I might be in Home Depot or there's a guy fixing my generator, and it starts the conversation because they'll say, hey, I liked your sticker on your car, or I have a picture of Trump's face or something. And then it brings people to you, and then you can say, well, I'm glad you like that, but you know, where do you get your news? Because we just said a lot of the news is no good, but there are good sources of news. So you might say, you know, read the New American Magazine, or you really want to be knowledgeable and credible and speak to facts when you're introducing yourself to someone, and maybe you wanted to say to them, you know, here's my card, you know, come to the meeting, whatever organization you may say that they need to get involved in, because as an individual, they may not have that much impact. So, you know, you have to have your card ready. Here's my card. Give me a call. We'll, you know, we'll follow up and we'll come, you know, come to the meeting. And the thing I like, and I always have materials with me, because if you give something in their hand, they're much more likely maybe to read it later. And so I'll say, look, here, take a look at this. And I might ask them, who's your congressman? And you'd be surprised, about 1 in 10 people even know who their congressman is, right? So I'll say, where do you live? You live in Sumter County? Okay, you got Dan Webster. Oh, yeah, I've heard of him. Yeah, he's good. I voted for him. Okay, how's his voting record? I don't know. You know anything about it? So, well, here's his voting record, right? Now why is this important? Because this is facts, right? This isn't me saying, well, you know, do this or that. This is the voting record. This is his voting record. What do you think? Maybe you should take a look at that, and maybe you want to, you know, get involved and see what we can do to get either someone better in a primary or influence him to vote the way you would like him to vote. If this is the way you'd like him to vote, then do that. But this is important, so you need to have things like this with you, right? This happens to be from the John Birch Society. Or I'll say to them, well, what about this New American magazine? This is a really good source of information that you can get some information about the CFR. What's the CFR? Well, take a look at this, take this home with you and read it, and it'll explain it to you. But basically, the CFR is one of the biggest lobbyist groups in the country that's been started by the Rockefellers, and they've had their members in the cabinet, no matter who was president, for years and years. And most people never even heard of them, but they're a gigantic organization. So that's the kind of thing. The Trump sticker on your car will allow you to start that conversation, because the person comes to you. So wear the hat, wear the shirt. If anybody would like, my pocket. I happen to make this sticker, so if you want me to put it on your car, I will give you one for free, but I have to put it on your car. Not take it home and stick it on your shelf. So anybody wants one, it says, "Don't believe corrupt media, go Trump." I made that about 5 years ago when I realized that the media is really one of our biggest problems, right? Okay, thank you.
And, you know, and why bring him up here? Why talk to John about that? Because I know what it's like. I know what it's like to be targeted. My family's been threatened. I've been personally threatened to be killed. You know, I carry a current commission, and they don't want me. I am protected by the Hatch Act because I run for office, right? I'm currently declared in the primary against Lindsey Graham for United States Senate. So but you don't understand what that means to me and my family. These people don't. There are about 500,000 people who've died in Ukraine now, right? They don't care. That's who these people are, right? People die around them. This is not a joke. This is not a game, right? These people are willing to rig a presidential election and throw their own people in jail, to lie to you, to do anything possible in order to maintain power. That's who they are. So when you decide to run for office, that's a very serious decision, right? Because they're going to come after you, and this is something that you need to remember. So what are the combats for some of those things? That's what I'm talking about when it comes to specialties. The color revolution as a methodology, many of us in this thing, right in the back there, in the back row, are different points of interest of the actual revolution. So if you want to figure out how to fight Saul Alinsky, there are a lot of people who have figured that out. You go find somebody, and I know basics is ridicule, you just laugh at them, right? But you can find people that will help you with this. All right, so control of the masses. There is a methodology. And what we've been trying to do, and I'm sure all of you have tried to do, is to wake up the masses. We're trying to get this into people's minds, to at least have them consider that perhaps what they are believing isn't true. And that's going to be very important when you're approaching people to say, you know, I'm not saying that I'm the absolute right. I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm just saying that I'm asking you to consider something different. So the way that you're approaching it. And also, if you come into a room and you're a young person and you're really nervous about what's going on and you're looking for direction and guidance, and they come into a room with a bunch of people who have their arms crossed, who are frowning, who are angry, they're going to turn around and leave, right? So we, as a community who have been hammered, tend to be a little bit grumpy. So one of the things that's for us is I always remind myself, what are 5 things I'm grateful for, right? Turn that frown upside down. When I'm communicating with people, I try to make myself more light, anything I can so that I'm not coming to somebody with black pill in them and dooming and glooming them all the time and they're going, well, I'm going to go back to playing video games. Thanks, but no thanks, right? So really think about it. You in this room right now are very important, and you are going to be the messengers to local people, even more than me. So think about even how you're carrying yourself when you're communicating with other people. Are you a messenger of light or a messenger of darkness? So you're waking people up. Again, nothing is organic. This is military precision. Everything is fake. And that's a hard thing to accept because I'm a Scooby-Doo baby, right? I'm 70s, right? And a Brady Bunch and that sort of thing. And unfortunately, the Brady Bunch doesn't exist. It just doesn't, right? For us in the Christian community, I'm a Christian. I'm sure many of you are Christians. We have that, but most of that was fake. A lot of that stuff doesn't exist. They had heavily, like in the A-Team, like nobody died ever. They always got out of the truck. You remember? So some of those things, not necessarily true. So out of all of them, I'm one of the ones that went from that world. I was the transition generation, Generation X, where the lingering of the boomers into this new world, and I can see clearly the difference between the two, right? So that was the last of the holding on of the happy days. Everybody remember the happy days, right? And now it's just nuts. You turn on the TV, you get sick to your stomach, right? All right, color revolution, and I am going to read slides because in the military they call it death by PowerPoint. And I really enjoy watching a junior lieutenant in the back of the room starting to fall asleep. I actually like it. I love torturing them. Don't let them stand up, right? So, color revolution, it's a regime change, essentially, right? This is how they come in and they get rid of, how y'all doing? Good morning. They get rid of leaders that they don't want. So a color revolution are one of the newest models of state destabilization. They allowed external actors to plead plausible deniability when accused of illegal interfering in the domestic affairs of a sovereign state. And their mass mobilization of people power renders them highly effective in the eyes of the global media. Additionally, a conglomerate of large numbers of civilians protesting the government always increases pressure on that said government and limits its options in effectively dealing with the ongoing destabilization. All color revolutions closely follow the same template, and understanding the nature of this applied tactic of destabilization will allow states to craft suitable countermeasures against it. We do not have suitable countermeasures against it right now. The latest success that I saw in a color revolution was in Georgia. Did anyone see what was going on in the country of Georgia? Right? So they were trying to get people who were literally subverting their government to report that you're subverting my government. And the globalists mobilized these provocateurs into the streets, blew stuff up, scared everybody, because they wanted Georgia to be their vassal state. They said, Georgia, you're going to do what we say you're going to do. If you don't do it, we're going to destabilize your nation and take you out. And credit to them, they actually held on. Right? But because Americans are naive, they don't have a lot of experience in this sort of stuff, right? In France, literally the only guy in France when you remember the tear gas exercise, right? So we did a tear gas exercise in boot camp. We had one French dude who wanted to be an American. He joined the United States Navy. The French dude, when we did the tear gas exercise, didn't even leave the room. He's like, what's wrong? Because he's French. They're always protesting in the street. They have a lot of experience in some of those things, whereas Americans, we never do that. So the idea of J6 would never come to our minds. We would never think that anybody would ever do anything like that. So like Georgia, we wouldn't know, but now we do. Now we're learning. But unfortunately, folks, we're way behind on that. This stuff has been going on for a long time. All right, let's keep rolling. All right, so this is the process. Again, if you're taking notes, it's a step. So step one, this is how you undermine the nation's leadership and its culture. First, you take over their social media, you take over their news. This is a military operation. This is what's done, right? You go in and you take it over. You create the impression that the minority opinion is the majority opinion using movies, propaganda, news, social media, corporations, TV commercials, etc. Going after Star Wars was an accident, right? Making Luke Skywalker a punk was not an accident. You understand? They are effeminate. They're going after your boys. They won't let your boys have anything. That's done on purpose. They're weakening your males, right? Activate and mobilize paid provocateurs to create a sense of chaos and fear. Did that happen? Right? It happens all the time. We know when they're going to do it. Here they come, here they come, here they come. Right? Create a major crisis with the solution provided by a future anointed puppet regime. Only way out of this is to get rid of these leaders. This crisis, the only way out is to get somebody better, right? Something like maybe a virus, right? Use propaganda, social media, etc., to undermine the nation's leadership and the leadership's authenticity. How was President Trump attacked? When he got into office, they said vile things about that man. He's one of the best presidents, if not the best president we've ever had, right? And the things that they said about him and the lies that they made up. And listen, folks, I've had the same experience. I ran for Secretary of State. They literally just made stuff up and put it out on a mailer. Made it up. And by the time you're catching up, right, we're just regular people. People are already talking about it. Even your friends, you're like, buddy, you're my friend. You've known me for 10 years. Why would you believe that, I killed a dog or something? They just make it up. So what they did to President Trump was horrible, right? But it's all part of the process. They make him look incompetent, foolish, drank bleach, all those crazy things that they did. All right, use lawfare in conjunction with propaganda news to fabricate lies about the populist leader to undermine their authority. In all cases, these lawsuits, investigations prove to be unfounded long after the damage has been done, right? So how many of these things, Russian collusion, they played that and played it and played it and played it, right? Because of their brainwashing. They're using this to create a narrative. They're creating a lie. By the time we unraveled it, it's, 5 years later, 6 years later? So that's what they do. Again, and what you're getting right now, and what I told you yesterday is grow up. You're in war. You're soldiers, and you're literally surrounded. We got them just like Patton said. This is not an easy fight. This is not a joke. So what is really important about what we're doing today is we're growing up and we're accepting the battlefield for what it is, and that there is no one coming to save you. You are coming to save you, right? So the more you know, the more you accept to be facts, the better for you, the better for us. So again, what do we do? So I had somebody come up to me yesterday and say, this is pretty overwhelming. What do we do? You do what you can in your area of operation. It's just like John said, if you can go out there, why does that tie to Saul Alinsky? Because at a certain point, not in South Carolina, but in other places, it was scary to wear Trump paraphernalia. People were scared to do that. So for John to do what he's doing, it's an act of courage, right? That's something that he can do right now. Doesn't have to go get training or jump out of a helicopter. He's now, and it's effective. So be courageous, speak up, do things. All right. Use fake polls and propaganda news to create the illusion that the puppet leader is more popular than the populist leader, setting the groundwork for a fraudulent election. So the polls. Oh, I'm sorry, but there's like 40% of this country that still approve of the President Biden? No, it's not true. And what is their sampling methodology? Who are they asking? Do you know anybody now that you could go up to and say, hey, is President Biden a great guy? I don't know. Even the Democrats won't say that. You do, right? So there's very few, very few. I would not say it's half the country or almost half. It's just nonsense. So one of the things they do, like in the last 2020, it's neck and neck, or it's so close. Or in that case, they made it look like Biden was the best thing since sliced bread, and when it came out, he lost, right? And the polling was completely lies. But they can use that as a narrative to set you up for the rigged election. All right. Create an environment of social chaos and uncertainty and blame it on the current leadership. Everybody's seen that. And deeply focus on the education system to create a sense of normalcy to the regime change for younger generations. So they hit us hard, right? The Soviets who helped to start that are probably in their graves going, wow, I really did great. Because a lot of what we're seeing actually is the old Soviets who went into our education system. But more importantly, if you're taking notes, think about the Frankfurt School. right? The Frankfurt School. So the Frankfurt School left Nazi Germany, went to California. They established there. They created something called critical theory. Critical theory is a way of going after everything in a culture, saying it stinks, and creating the oppressor oppressed. It was the Frankfurt School. They still exist. They could not get a class war in the United States, so they created critical race theory, right? So it is Marxist. It is a communist move. But remember, there is another level. Communism is just a tool by this parasitical elite. They want us to be communists. They're certainly not. So when they use communist, it's still just another tool in the color revolution. All right, let's go. We are step 2. All right, we're moving on. Everybody got step 1? Everybody understand step 1, right? So you take over the social, yes, you got it? All right, so step 2, selection, not election. Now this is done with hammer, scorecard, different operations out of the intelligence community, you know, or just old-fashioned ballot stuffing, but it is done with military precision, right? We go and we decide, yeah, you got a purple thumb. That means a lot, right? So step 2, selection, not election. Use voting machines to manipulate the results of election to place selected puppets and officials. Anybody know what Smartmatic is? Right? Hugo Chavez? So that's that's where it started, right? So they figured it out. They shipped it around the world. People literally buy it. They give, you know, certain factions, different states, to use these machines to select, not elect, your politicians. So what they have created through the color revolution process is a selection, not an election. So all right, my note takers, think about the cross. Think about the cross. There is no left or right. That is nonsense. That's like the Dallas Cowboys versus the Washington Redskins. Doesn't exist. It's who owns the NFL, right? There's up and down. So you have the people versus a parasitical elite. In the United States, South Carolina for sure, we created a government, we the people created a government in the middle of that one. And that government was to protect our interests from the parasitical elite. And we used an election system to put them in place. That's how we defended ourselves from parasitical elite, which also equals what? Aristocracy. Right? Same thing, all the same thing. Now what's happened? They perfected this process of rigging our elections unbelievably. They own it. So they select their people. So now that vertical, where we the people government, now we have a permanent political class that is selected by the parasitical elite. They decide who gets elected, and they work for them. So you call them up and say, hey, I want you to do so-and-so. They're not going to do it. They don't work for you. They're not elected. They're selected. So now you have a permanent political class. It's owned by a parasitical elite. And when we said, oh, no, back in 2020, what did they do? They weaponized that government against you. That's what they did. So you need to own it. Right? And if you have people out there that still think the machines are okay, I mean, at this point, they're helpless. They're hopeless. So that definitely is a major element of the color revolution. Create multiple avenues of cheating to include both individual and election voter fraud. So a lot of times what they do, and Mark will talk to this more. How am I on my time? I'm doing okay. They'll give obvious ones, right? So they'll come in and they'll use Sharpies or something that we can all catch. Ooh, they did it, but it won't change the election results. So they do a bunch of different things, like Mark will call it death by 1,000 cuts. We'll find a few of them, but we're not finding the meat of it. We're not finding the overall system that they do. And when we do actually when we hit that, when we find the right thing, oh, they shut us down. They shut us down fast. In South Carolina, when we asked for the cast vote records, that's just an image of the votes. They literally, Republicans, a Republican attorney general said, you're not getting that. We took it to an amazing woman, took it to court under her own expenses mostly, and they just dismissed it. They won't even give us an image of our ballots in a red state, all right? Selections, not elections. And again, this isn't any type of woo-woo. This is a military operation. Grow up. All right. Next, use lawfare to break down the country's election laws to create mass mail-in voting, unlimited absentee, and increased durations for voting. In South Carolina, Again, red state. Right before the election, they had multiple lawsuits to get drop boxes, to get whatever they wanted. They were going for their candy shop in South Carolina, and we just barely stopped them there by actually convincing the Republicans to do something, right? So they changed the legislation, and that's military guys changing legislation through the people that they own to change the rules of the election. So not only are they using the machines, are they using ballot stuffing, they're using legislation. They have got backups from backups from backups to be able to control the system. Use a crisis to change the rules of voting: war, social media, or disease. Anybody got one for me that happened in 2020? COVID, right? Very convenient, very interesting timing, right? Create unnecessary complexity. Those who are tasked with running elections have no idea how the equipment works or how the process works. So you can get as mad as you want going in and yelling at the clerk, hey, this election's rigged or whatever. They have no idea. Matter of fact, because they get so scared because you're right, they actually run to the people who are rigging the elections, right? So you become the bad guy. So literally the people who are running these elections most of the time don't know what they're talking about. They have no idea. All right, so that's step 2. Everybody got it? So the election. So first, you've created the narrative. That's the first part. You've created the narrative that this is an incompetent, cruddy leader. Our whole country is in a state of chaos. Everything's awful. We need to replace this guy. He does this, that, or whatever. But provocateurs are in the streets. Look at, people are literally rioting because he's so awful. And now we've got this disease. And they created that. Then they come in and they create fake polls to go, and look, he's so unpopular, he's going to definitely get out elected. Next, they rig the election. So they go, oh, okay, well, obviously that was what's going to happen because look at the narrative and look at the election process. I mean, it's obvious. Step 3, close the door. And this is where we are, folks. Close the door. This is where we are. And it's hard. Immediately weaponize the government against the people. Any of you in your wildest dreams imagine something like J6 would happen? I can't even. We're Americans, right? I'm a South Carolinian, and I'm sorry, I'm a Southerner. South Carolina comes first. But we have people in D.C. who are now indefinitely detained without trial. Men fought to make sure that didn't happen. My family has been in this country for over 300 years. One of the reasons we're here is so things like that didn't happen. So they literally weaponized the government. They have these boys, and you know this, Sergeant, boys dressed up in military uniform and kit. They're wearing military kit in the FBI. They're cops, right? Dressed up like this. I'm a military man. And they come in and bound down grandma's house because she wore a red hat to D.C. Those LARPing fools, they don't know what they're doing. I mean, you want to be a soldier during the military. Don't be wearing a bunch of hero gear, busting down grandma's house. I can't even begin to tell you what we think about that in the military. It's abhorrent. They have weaponized the government against the people. All right, infiltrate populace, resistance, and exacerbate tense situations. That creates propaganda opportunities for propaganda. So you go in, you get into the Proud Boys, you do whatever, and you're the person who instigates it, and then they can go, look, these people are domestic extremists, blah, 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 but they're probably the ones who did it. If you don't think Michigan was a test run for J6, you're crazy, right? Absolutely. All right, make example of populist leaders, even regular citizens. Citizens who attempt to defend their country from a hostile takeover are treated severely without rights or trial. Has that happened? And again, I'm not writing this as something that's backwards. This is a manual. This was written prior. So it should be really stark to you, like, oh man, that's exactly what happened, because that's what they're doing. Heavily censor, heavily, right? Make sure that any voices attempting to reveal the truth about any aspect of the takeover regime change are silenced, censored, deplatformed, and ostracized. Use terms like conspiracy theory, right? I know how to say conspiracy theory in other languages. That's how much it's used, right? To label anyone outside of the given narrative as crazy and even dangerous. So anytime, what we talked about when we first started this, right? We talked about using your intuition, connecting with God, using the information that comes to you, and you can go, okay, that's true, that's not true. And sometimes you get outside of the narrative and say, you know, maybe what they're telling me isn't true. Maybe it's something else. And what do? They attack you. They call you crazy. They call you a conspiracy theory. They call you a Christian nationalist. I mean, all these names. And that comes back to John again. And what you should be able to do at this point is go, yeah, okay, whatever, bring it, right? Because their process is to get you so shamed that you won't say any of those things anymore. You'll keep your mouth shut. Change the laws and rules associated with elections to cement your power permanently. I don't know if y'all remember, but as soon as these people took over, right, our country in D.C., they had it was like first bill, H.R. 1 or something. They were going to change our elections to permanently cement their power and end the Constitution. This is not hyperbole. They do not want the Electoral College. They do not want the Constitution. They are rogue, right? And they definitely were going to end it with their bills. Thank God we were able to stop some of those things. All right? All right, attack the family unit. Oh, this is so true. Attack the family unit. Diminish the role of the male. Emasculate the military and males. Destroy mythos and archetypes. Villainize the country's history and break down its borders. Does that happen? Right? And mythos. Let's go back to what we were talking about with mythos. For Generation X, is anybody out there, can anybody guess what Generation X mythos is? Star Wars. Generation X lives and breathes OG Star Wars. When I was growing up, my son is named Luke. Luke Skywalker was everything. Han Solo was everything. Don't take lightly what Disney did to Star Wars. They killed Han Solo. They destroyed Luke Skywalker. These things were all done to emasculate the boys. Now, you ask my 7-year-old boy, what can you watch that isn't girl power? There's nothing. Nothing. That's done on purpose. And if they take over the regime head, what would you do if you took over? The first thing I would do was humiliate the military. In the United States Navy, they got men dressing like women on the ships. We would choke somebody to death for that. It's unbelievable what they've done to humiliate our military, right? I couldn't secure a parking lot at this point. I mean, it's well done. They've done what they set out to do. All right, take over the education system, encourage immorality, and decrease standards. Remember, I don't know if anybody knows the phrase, Austrians have a baby for Hitler. So he went in and broke down the morals of Austria. Right? Create an entire generation who has been brainwashed to break down the country. Right? Again, I'm not writing this tailored to the United States. It's done in other places. So you have a generation that starts through critical theory or critical race theory hating their own country. And they did that, right? Replace the brainwashed generation, the useful idiots, with a police state. You may think your guy is in, but you're next, that's right. And there will be no rednecks to save you, right? Bye-bye country. So you break down the family unit, you destroy its history. How much slow I got? 1 minute? Wow. Break down the country, and you're done. So that's the process. This is called a color revolution. Right? So that's 1, 2, 3. So now how that will be incorporated into the rest of the day is you're going to see people who will bring up elements of that 1, 2, 3 step. So next up, we'll do an intro for an intro video for Sheila. And she's going to give you more information and background about certain aspects of that. Right? So if you got any questions for me on that color revolution process, please put them on a card and I'll answer them later. And let's use that as your framework as we move forward for the day so you understand what you're building into. So.
To be part of this division of race, sex, politics, and religion. Jesus is love, so some have heard, but I can't recall him forcing anyone to hear his words. I'm building a bunker, I'm building a bridge. I've still got love and friends and family on my fridge. But I got a Bible and some bullets in a spot out on the ridge. I'm building the bunker, I'm building the bridge. and agendas, they just get louder. We're all sparks and someone spreading powder. So keep your faith, stay strong, renew, and stop blaming God for all the awful that people do. I'm building the bunker, I'm building the bridge. I've still got love and friends and family on my fridge. But I got a Bible and some bullets in a spot out on the bridge. I'm building the bunker, I'm building the bridge. I'm just one man holding out a hand, searching for some common ground, hoping those fools come around. But I'm ready if something else goes down. I'm building the bunker, I'm building the bridge. I've still got pictures of all my babies on my fridge. But I got a Bible and some bullets in a spot out on the bridge. I'm building the bunker, I'm building the bridge. I'm building the bunker, I'm building the bridge.